Okay, we are starting a new project, which is a spot illustration project. Assignment 7. I'm going to start off just introducing you to the concept in Photoshop here. And what spot illustrations generally are line drawings that are then colored behind in Photoshop. So it's what we call digital coloring. But you can't start any idea and you can't sketch without kind of knowing basic shapes and having a concept. So let's see, the concept I'm going to use is just something really simple, a crown. So I want to make kind of a tattoo-like illustration of a crown. So I'm going to sketch. I want it to be like a logo in that it's free floating. Maybe this will go on a t-shirt. Maybe it'll go on a skateboard. But unlike a logo, I don't need to worry about it being so clear and direct. I can give multiple layers to my spot illustration. It could even tell a story if I want. But because it's a spot illustration, it's not going to fill up the whole rectangle. It's going to exist within its own shape. So I always think of it as sticker design, like the stickers you can buy from the coin-operated machines at the grocery store that you would put on your surfboard or on your binder or on your skateboard. Okay, so how do I sketch it out? Well, I'm going to sketch it out using kind of blue line here. And I'm just going to put little details in. You can sketch it out just in your sketchbook and then scan that sketch in. The sketch will be something I want to see as part of the project. And often you try out lots of ideas and sketches before you commit to one. I always sketch with something I can erase. And I do a lot of these for the campus. I'll actually probably use an actual job for my more finished demo. But I want to show you the sketching process I go through. Okay, so I might sketch something and then I think, okay, I want some shadow details behind it here. And then I think, oh, it'd be cool if there was like flames coming from the top. And then I like sparrows and kind of 1930s tattoo design, so maybe throw one of those in there. Split-tailed sparrow. Okay, so if this is kind of the idea, let's see, where do I want that beak? I've drawn that on one layer. That layer is separate from my white background, right? Now on top of that, I can easily make a new layer and make my black line work. And the smart way to do this is as a vector. So I'm going to use a 100% hardness brush at 100% opacity, and it's not going to be pretty. Let's see, I want to use a brush that is size sensitive. Why is it only giving me gray? Oh, I took the opacity down on my sketch layer so I can see my black lines more clearly. And I'm just going to start drawing it in. And this is called digital inking. Now there's a few ways you can digital ink. You can do it that way. You can also use some of the vector tools in Photoshop. So if I say use the freeform pen tool, which is like the pencil tool in Illustrator, I can get a more even selection. We'll clean up my lines a little bit and make a path with anchor points, right? And then if I right-click on that, I can say make it a stroke path. And then I can actually link it to my brush tool, and I can say simulate pressure. and say OK, and it will follow that line with the anchor points with the brush that I was using. If I don't want to simulate pressure, then it will be one equal width the whole time. But better to just use that in Illustrator, in my opinion. But what's nice is we can use a combination of both. So I can use that path if I want, or I can just ink it up fast. And because it's not a logo, I can actually get kind of creative with how I ink it. I can use different brushes, different widths, and I can be really kind of messier if I want. But the key is I want line work. So this is a chiseled brush. And we'll get more into digital painting and all the brush capabilities soon. But the important thing is that we're making our own original image for this. Flames in the background. Everything in black line to start with. Just really easy to define. And now I want the bird. Give it some space. Maybe choose a different brush. Let's see. There's a lot of new ones I haven't used before. In Creative Cloud that are new. This one feels pretty good. It's kind of a graphite nub. It's a little bit softer edged. Now, often I will sketch these by hand, and I will even ink them by hand, and then I will just scan them in. But digital sketching has a lot of advantages too, because you can try out lots of things very quickly. So I often do my thumbnail sketches, my original sketches this way. Kind of build up an idea of what I want. All right, so let's say that that's my line work. What's nice about digital sketching is I don't need an eraser. I can just see the image as it is, and then I can say, File, Save As, a PNG, one layer PNG onto the desktop. And then I can use Illustrator for its strengths. Can open up that one layer transparent PNG in Illustrator, and just like with our logo project, I can vectorize it. And our first goal for our spot illustration is to get really clean black line work, even if those black lines will get replaced by a color later. All right, so here's my PNG. I'm going to trace it as a silhouette, and I'm going to play with the threshold until it's about what I want. And of course, just like our logo, we could clean this up. All right, so let's say I like that. I'm going to expand it. Now it's a vector. As a vector, I could redraw the lines. I could use my pencil tool and correct it. But this project's all about learning to work between Illustrator and Photoshop. And the reason we're using Illustrator is to get really clean line work, right? And you can do that right over your sketch in Illustrator if you want to. Just lots of ways you can do it. Okay, so let's say that this is beautiful, clean line work. It's everything I want. Now comes the new stuff. So we're going to save this as an EPS file to the desktop. And then I'm going to start the digital coloring in Photoshop. So I'm going to go back to my PNG, open it with Photoshop, because this is, maybe I'll make actually a new file, make it a little bit bigger. That's the beauty about vectors. I can make it any size I want. And this is where I'm going to digitally color it. So instead of coloring it as a vector, which is very limiting, I'm going to color it in Photoshop. Here, let's get it. Well, no, that's fine. Well, give a little bit more space. Let's make it 12 inches, 9 by 12 inches, but I want it tall, like a poster. At 350. Okay, now I've opened that up. I'm going to drag my EPS in, and it's going to be what's called a smart object, and I can make that as large or as small as I want, and it will perfectly match the resolution that I've set. So it's as clean as possible. And I can resize it anytime I need just by hitting Command-T, and as long as it stays a smart object with that little extra window in the layer, it will always recreate the resolution, so it will never lose resolution. Okay, this is how we digitally color. We're going to lock that line work with this padlock, and then behind it, we're going to make new layers. I'm going to lock the background too, so I don't accidentally paint over my white. And the first type of coloring we're going to talk about is called flat color. So flat color is what old comic books used. And if I have time in this demo, I can show you some quick examples I pulled up of Wonder Woman. Good old Wonder Woman. So this is kind of the order of coloring as it has advanced in illustration through the 20th century with printing. Because anything that's illustration is made to be reproduced, so it really makes the use of these printing techniques. So on Wonder Woman here, you see a flat color for every local color that she is. So the skin tone is one flat color. The red is one flat color. The blue is one flat color. The yellow of her lasso is one flat color. Problem was they didn't have a whole lot of color variations. As comics evolved and turned to animation, you would still use flat color. It was just a lot cheaper. So we have one flat color for the skin, and that's called the local color. One flat color for the red, one for the yellow, one for the blue, so on and so on. What changed is the black line work on top. The more complicated the line work, the better the flat color looks underneath it. So there's only blue underneath her hair, but the hair looks much more dynamic because it's got all this different varied line work, whereas her skin looks very open and simple. So our first layer is going to be flat color. And so the way I do that is with a brush. I'm just going to use a big, simple brush, 100% hardness, 100% opacity, a large size, and I'm going to pick a color. But you know what I can do, and what I love about Photoshop? What I love about Photoshop is I can actually steal the color instead of having to find it through this color makeup. So if I want kind of a gold or a yellow for the crown, I can find it through their color palette, right? But what I think actually is a lot more exciting and gives you more options is to steal it from other Photoshop files. And so that's what we're going to look at with the next demo.